A quick little public service announcement before we start. You know when you guys are in a movie theater and before the previews there's normally that little tiny short where it's just like, alright guys, turn off your cell phones. You should listen to it because when you're watching a movie like First Man and you know there's like a really intense moment and it gets really quiet and then all of a sudden you hear, there's one small step for man, one giant... Turn off your damn phone! Hello everybody, my name is Brandon, aka the BrandoCritic, and today we're discussing First Man. So yes, turn off your cell phones, or at least put them on silent before the movie starts, and if you like talking about movies, then definitely hit that subscribe button. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard the saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Basically meaning that one thing might have a lot of mediocre features, but then when you step back and you look at it as a whole, it's beautiful, it's magnificent, whatever word you want to use, it's better than all the little parts if you look at them individually. You know, like if you look at a movie, you know, you might say, okay, how's the acting? It's okay. How's the story? It's okay. How are the jokes? It's okay. But when you look back at the entire movie and you say, you know what, I really enjoyed that. First Man was not like that at all. If you look at every single moment, or at least every single aspect of the filmmaking, the acting, directing, writing, cinematography, and I will touch upon most of these things, production design, visual effects, you know, all those things, you look at each one and you say, that is spectacular filmmaking. There's a reason why I bought a ticket for this movie in IMAX. But at the end of the day, when I step back and when someone will say, hey, did you see First Man? You know, I'll say yes. And then they'll say, oh, should I go see it? Yeah, you should go see it. But you don't need to watch it again. Yes, unfortunately this movie, I can't give it that 5 out of 5 that people are giving it, or at least that 4 out of 5, because to me, I can look at this from a technical standpoint and, you know, put on my film school goggles and look at this movie through, you know, all the reasons I listed below, the acting and directing and all that stuff, and say, okay, all this stuff is great, but I don't need to see this movie again. Really, it didn't impact me like movies like Apollo 13. However, before I start talking about the negatives, there are some good things about this movie. First off, Ryan Gosling. So it's no secret that Ryan Gosling is one of the most charismatic actors, and he's also one of the best looking actors on the planet. And he's great as Neil Armstrong, right? He's just a great actor. And one thing I noticed, and I was starting to catch up on this, is that his acting comes a lot from his just stone cold face and his eyes. You know, he's able to exude so much emotion just by the way he looks at someone. You know, he doesn't do the over the top shouting, acting like a Tom Cruise or, dare I say, Nicolas Cage, although that guy's nuts. He's awesome, but he's nuts. You know, his acting is all through his eyes, right? His stone cold demeanor. That's how he acts. Yeah, he does a speech here and there, but he is great in this movie because he doesn't really say that much, and you are able to feel everything he's feeling and you understand somewhat of what he's going through. And then Claire Foy, who plays his wife, is amazing here too, because I didn't even clue in that was her. Yeah, that's The Crown, you know, that's Queen Elizabeth from The Crown. Her American accent was so good. I honestly thought, it's like, oh, this is a new actress. This must be like her first role. No, she's great. And again, Jason Clarke and I forget the guy's name, the guy who played the FBI agent in Wolf of Wall Street, he's great too. This movie's acting across the board is fantastic. And the second silver lining for me is the cinematography. And you know, you can tell that the cinematography is not just, you know, static shots, you know, like A angle, B angle, you know, shot, reverse shot. You know, it feels very claustrophobic, right? And that's not just simply because they're up in space and they're in a tight space, but even when they're just talking in their house, you know, Neil Armstrong and his wife are just talking about anything, you know, the camera feels like, you know, it's like moving around and just like it's zooming in and stuff like that. So it's not a very static, that's the word I'm trying to look for. It's not static whatsoever. The whole movie, even when they're not up in the spaceship, it has this claustrophobic sense to it that when you actually are with Neil Armstrong up in space on any one of his missions, it feels very claustrophobic, which makes the intense scenes even more intense, because again, it's not like one big static shot of, you know, the spaceship going around. You know, it's not to scale. You don't really feel the insanity that's going on in that little pod. you know, the camera is just constantly being zoomed into like the different control gauges going crazy and going but you know, the camera's going crazy and you're showing Ryan Gosling's like face and stuff, and you know, you're seeing some of the damage from inside the window looking out, and again, that causes a lot more like intensity, and it feels like you actually you're actually in the pod. Of course, you're not going to actually pass out, but again, it's just the choices from the cinematographer and the director that, okay, if we have this camera and we have this style, and I do like how they make it look like it's from like the 1960s, but you know, if we shoot it like this, it's going to feel a lot more intense rather than just, you know, having one static shot and just going, Neil, are you okay? The watt gauge is at 49% or whatever all that lingo is. Also, I love when movies do that kind of jargon. Yeah, do you copy there, Houston? We're losing control up in the tower. Like, I'm a kind of a sucker for that. But the technical side and that filmmaking technique is great. So yes, this movie is technically brilliant. However, the two reasons that I can really boil down to of why I wasn't able to be really emotionally invested and emotionally moved by this movie are two reasons. One, it doesn't have that triumphant feeling at the end. You know, man landed on the moon. We did not do this because they're easy. We did that because they are hard. I cannot do JFK. I'll stop doing it. But you know what I mean, right? That speech is in the movie, but I don't feel a sense of, yes, we did it. We went to the moon. We beat the Russians. I'm Canadian, whatever. You know, I don't feel like at the end of the movie I wanted to be like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. I just wish I could have gone up to space. Again, this film kind of goes for a more realistic tone. It's more of a character piece rather than a story about the Apollo mission that went to the moon. This is a Neil Armstrong movie. You know, it deals with deaths of characters, and it deals with funerals, and it deals with character turmoil between him and his wife. And that's all fine. I don't mind that. And oh my god, it sounds like a spaceship's going off. Loud motorcycle. Anyways, it doesn't feel like this sense of like this uplifting feel, right? And again, it's more a personal preference of what kind of story you want to see, but I don't know, when I hear stories of Neil Armstrong being the first man to ever walk on the moon, you could have dialed up the happiness and the good feeling. I'm trying to find the word for it, you know, like that uplifting feel, right? You want to leave the theater going, wow, Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. However, and this brings me into my second point, is that they portray Neil Armstrong as kind of an unlikable character. Now I'm going to state right off the bat, I don't know much about Neil Armstrong as a person. I haven't done that much research on him. I didn't know the guy personally. I wasn't alive back then. You know, so I can't compare what Ryan Gosling portrayed in the movie to the actual person of Neil Armstrong. So I don't know how accurate it is. However, no matter if it's a true story or it's a fictional story, if I don't like the main character, I can't get invested in the story. Right? I was invested in the story because, you know, it was super cool seeing all those techniques, and it was super cool seeing like space stuff. I'm definitely more of a sci-fi guy than a fantasy guy, and you know, seeing all the spaceships and, you know, all that, Houston, we got a problem, like all that kind of stuff. That was cool to see, but as the Neil Armstrong character himself, I just didn't like him. And I don't care that, you know, that might have been how he actually was. And, you know, props for the movie for getting that part right, if they did, but still, I wasn't able to be like, okay, I'm totally behind this guy for treating his kids like members of the press as opposed to, you know, his actual children. I wasn't able to completely get behind him, therefore I wasn't completely invested in the story. So in the end, although Neil Armstrong wasn't the most likable character, at least how he was portrayed in this movie, and there wasn't, at least for me, there wasn't enough of a triumphant ending and a triumphant feel throughout the movie, like there's gonna be like a big progression to the first man on the moon. I still give this movie a 3 out of 5 because of the technical marvels, and it wasn't so much that like I hated Neil Armstrong and I wanted to see him get killed, and obviously I knew that wasn't gonna happen. This is a true story, we all know what happens. But again, I was emotionally invested enough, and the technical aspects of all the space missions and the claustrophobic nature of the cinematography, that kept me invested. So for that, I give the movie a 3 out of 5 because I did enjoy my time with First Man. So anyways guys, tell me in the comment section down below, have you seen First Man? What did you think of it? Please, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And again, if you're new and you want to see more videos like this, please hit subscribe, it means the world to me. And thank you so much for watching. Take care.